All right. So in the previous class, I think I already discussed about the various methods of welding of rails, wherein we in detail discussed about what electric arc welding is, oxyacetylene welding, and then flash butt welding, and also the chemical or thermite welding. I also showed you some of the videos which would be very helpful for you to understand. You can just search in YouTube about these different welding techniques, and you can watch the videos and get an idea about how the welding of rails would be done. Okay. So before I begin with today's class, I expect all of you to write your registration number and name in caps in the chat box. Okay. Now let us continue with the next part of this chapter, that is length of welded rails. Now joints are usually considered to be as the weakest section in the tracks. I think I have been repeatedly telling the same thing since beginning, that joints are considered to be as the weakest. Now I don't say that the welded joints are weakest, but compared to the welded joints, the fish joints, which has the fish plates and fish bolts in place, where we join two rail sections together in a railway along a railway track, is considered to be as the weakest section, because you will be having number of components sitting at one single place, which will be very vulnerable to get disturbed when the vehicles are moving at a high speed. So it is an understanding that lesser the number of joints, lower would be the risks, and lesser would be the maintenance cost and maintenance operations. Okay. So lesser the joints, more will be the comfort that people might come across, and better would be the safety, and also the fuel consumption would be less, because there will be a less number of joints and friction would be less, and so on. I think we have already discussed about the advantages of having welded joints in railway track or along a railway track. So you need to keep all those advantages in your mind. So longer the length of the rail section, it ensures smoother ride and comfort throughout the travel, right? So I think I have already mentioned that you have certain standard length of rails that are manufactured in the factories. Normally each rail, that is flat footed rail, will be of around 12.8 meters in length as per Indian Railway standards. Okay, every country will be having its own standards, but as per Indian Railways, it is 12.8 meters. Right. Now, the reason of standardizing this rail is to benefit the engineers to quantify the material and also transport the material, because you will not be able to carry a very long rail on any kind of means of transport that we have. So that's the reason they have come out with a standard rail length of 12.8 meters. So these 12.8 meters will have to be joined together to build a railway track of hundreds of kilometers or thousands of kilometers, right? So during the manufacturing process itself, you will be standardizing the length. So the length should be in such a way that it will be easily transportable and it can be easily handled. Transported means you have the air transport, you have the land transport, which includes railways as well as roadways, and even some cases you have waterways. Okay, so it should be easily fitted. The length should be in such a way that it should be easily accommodable in these kind of vehicles that operate on the transportation system. Okay, so it can be it must be easily transportable. Then the length should be in such a way that it is easily handled and placed, because there will be machineries which will be used to place these rails on the railway track. So it should be easy to handle and place at the site by the workers or by machineries. Because of this reason, the variation in length due to temperature is not proportioned to the length of the rail. So that is what you need to keep in your mind, right? In India, they upon extensive research that has been carried out, it has been found that the extent to which one single rail of 12.8 meter length expands or contracts will be similar to the expansion and contraction that might take when you join 3 to 5 different rails. So since this is the conclusion that they have come out with, it is an understanding that you need to keep in your mind, that it would be easy for you to provide one fish joint after every 3 to 5 rails, and these 3 to 5 rails can be welded with each other, so that 12.8 multiplied by 3 rails or 5 rails would be the one single section on a railway track, because you have welded those rails together, right? So that's with respect to the expansion that is going to take place. Now, there's a basic theory that is being put up, which we call as the theory of welding of rails, which is to consider the rate at which the expansion takes place. So normally, the increase in length of rail due to the expansion would be given by this formula, that is delta L is equal to L alpha T, where L is considered as the length of the rail in centimeters, alpha is the coefficient of expansion of the metallic rail, and T is, that is small t, is the rise in temperature above the laying temperature. Laying temperature is the ambient temperature at which the uh, uh, ambient temperature or atmospheric temperature, which is to be considered as the temperature when the rails are to be placed at the site. Okay, so you need to keep in your mind that this delta L is nowhere related to directly this L, that is the length of the rail, as well as the coefficient of expansion. So basically we are interested to know the change in length, that is the strain possibly. Okay, so therefore if you try to accommodate this particular analogy, then you will be getting a final equation somewhat like this, where F is equal to alpha TA into E, where F is the force in kg required to prevent expansion due to temperature variation, right? And here A would be the cross sectional area of the rail in centimeter square, and then you have E, which is the modulus of elasticity of the steel in kg per centimeter square. Okay, so this is the force that is required to prevent the expansion, and you need to find out that force, right? So there are two such examples which are being given here, simple examples just for understanding of how this formula works. So the first example is depending upon to find out to find out the change in length. So this change in length delta L is equal to L alpha T. So standard length of the rail is 12.8 meters. Alpha, as I told you, would be given to you in the problem. So here in the problem, it is somewhat like this. You have been asked to find out the increase in the length of the rail of standard section 12.8 meters when the rise of temperature is 30 degrees, and the alpha, that is coefficient of expansion, would be given to you. So temperature is given to you, alpha will be given to you, and then the standard length of the rail section would be given to you. You can find out what would be the relevant strain or change in the length. So here L is the standard length of the rail, that is 12.8 meters. You need not convert it, and then multiplied by alpha is coefficient of expansion, that is 1.15 into 10 raised to minus 5, right, multiplied by 100. Okay, this is the conversion factor multiplied by temperature, that is 30. So when you all together multiply it, you would get change in length as 0.442 centimeters or 4.42 millimeters. So this is the change in the length that is going to take place because of the rise in temperature to 30°C. So that's about the first example. Now the next example would be to find out the length of the track to overcome uh, temperature stresses and to prevent creep for equilibrium when you have been given the cross sectional area of the I section or the rail section as 60 centimeters square. Alpha is again 1.15 into 10 raised to minus 5 per degree, right? That is the coefficient of expansion. Modulus of elasticity of the steel is 21.5 into 10 to the power of 5 kg per centimeter square. The temperature here is 30°C. You can assume 700 kg per kilometer to be as the resistance to the track movement. Okay, so this is the problem that has been given to you. You need to find out the force and then the temperature to overcome the stresses and also to prevent the creep of the rail section. So the force to prevent this expansion, the equation is already been discussed. You have F is equal to alpha T A into E. Almost all the things are being given to you. So you need to know that the product of alpha and T will be equal to the stress in rail per degree rise in temperature. So that is small f. Okay, substitute all the values in this, you will be getting the value of F. So this F is equal to 44,460 kilos. So that is the amount of force that is required to prevent the expansion required on the railway track. You can also find out the product of L and T, or you have this sorry you can also find out this factor LT, which would be the length of the track required to overcome the stresses. So this force divided by the resistance of the track, that is 700 kg per kilometer, would give you this value, that is this much of it might be around 63.5 kilometers. So 63.5 kilometers of track is required to overcome the temperature stress, right? Then you have the value of the length of the track required to minimize the creep. So to minimize the creep, you already have the LT value with you. Substitute all the other values into it, and then you will be getting the answer, that is 127 kilometers. So this 127 kilometers is actually the length of the railway track that is required to minimize the chances of creep taking place on the railway track. Okay, so this is how these two simple examples can be taken into consideration. Such kind of an example can be asked for 2 to 3 marks in the examination, but not so frequently. But the theories are very important for you to understand. These formulas and the theory behind length of welding of rails and the various methods of welding that are practiced in railways. So I suppose this chapter was clear to you. This is a kind of introductory chapter for you to understand about the basics of railway engineering, which would be very important for you to know when we study the further chapters, which will be slightly complicated, right? So any doubts you have in this chapter? I think you have studied plenty of things in this chapter, which is on introduction to railway engineering. Any doubts you have? I hope you have understood this chapter clearly. Yes?
So wonderful.
Yes.
So second problem, length, the creep required for minimizing the length of the track, is that always multiplied by 2 into LT, sir?
Yes, yes, yes. Because you will be having two such rails. We are talking about a single track. That's why there will be two such rails. So it is with respect to the creep along the whole railway track. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Any other doubts you have?
No, sir.
Okay. Should we continue with the next chapter?
Yes, sir.
Fine. So in this chapter, I think I had already discussed few things about this chapter. So this chapter is basically on traction and tractive resistances along a railway track. So I think I have already discussed with you about the definition of traction. So what exactly do you mean by traction is what you need to know. So as a part of revision, I would just like to give you the brief meaning and introduction about what we had discussed in the class some time back. Okay, so traction is basically the phenomena of pulling or pushing of anything that is under stationary condition. Okay, so this particular phenomena of traction is actually with respect to some amount of energy that is being put on a system for it to be pushed or pulled. Without any energy, you will not be able to push or pull anything, isn't it? So this particular process of traction in railways, especially the trains which operate on the railway track, they will be accommodated with an engine which works on some energy which we call as the tractive energy, which comes out of plenty of energy sources. Okay, so in the earlier days the energy source was coal, and then nowadays you might have seen the trains moving at a very high speed which operate on diesel traction and also on electric traction. There are many such tractive energies which have come into the market, but these are some of the most popular ones that are operating on the railway track. Now, let me again remind you that when you talk of a train, there will be one unit at the front or somewhere in between the wagons or at the end, which we call as the uh, locomotive or the tractive unit. So this tractive unit is technically called as a locomotive, and this locomotive will be having number of mechanical components and electrical components within it, which actually generates energy through the engine, and it gets transmitted to the driving wheels, and these driving wheels are the one that will be pushing or pulling the whole train. Along with these locomotives, you will be having some other units which we call as wagons. Normally people call it as bogies, but it's a layman's terminology. We normally call it technically as wagons. So these are non-tractive, just trailing units. So they are just trailing units, they will not be having engines into it which generates energy, right? So those are called as the trailing units. So in a train you will be having two such units which we call as the propelling unit, and the other one is the trailing unit. So we have these three different tractive energies that we have been using very popularly in railways. Okay, now when we talk about tractive resistance, there will be a number of resistances that comes across this particular train when it is trying to move, and those resistances need to be overcome by the train for it to move ahead from one position to the other position, right? There'll be huge amount of resistances, and for a smooth operation of these vehicles we have to overcome these tractive resistances. So those forces which are required to overcome these resistances are called as resisting the tractive forces. Normally, these tractive forces should be enough, or should be adequate enough to overcome these kind of resisting forces that are coming across, which will be resisting the vehicle to move ahead. So normally there are various resisting forces which have been categorized in railways. One is the train resistance, second is the resistance due to track profile, third is the resistance due to starting and acceleration, and then the last one would be the wind resistance. So among all the different resistances that the train will come across, these are some of the prominent ones which need to be considered and given importance, such that the vehicle or the locomotive will be having sufficient power within it to overcome these resistances, either during the starting process or during the acceleration process, or while it is trying to move at a constant speed or variable speed under different terrain conditions. Okay, so these four names are very important for you to remember, because in the next class I'll be discussing about each one of these in detail. I'll be starting about these concepts in the next class because I cannot stop it in between. It has to go in one single flow, because all these concepts are interlinked. At the end, you will be getting an equation, one single equation, which will be giving you the force that is required to overcome these resistances for the vehicle to move smoothly on a railway track. Okay, is that clear? So in the next class, I'll be discussing about train resistance first. Fine. So is this was this class clear to you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So in the next class, I'll begin with uh, train resistance. Okay. I'll stop here.